Now, Moscow says its troops were never really in Ukraine, so they can't be withdrawing. Russia's President Putin did choose to comment on the ceasefire, saying he's satisfied it is largely holding. But Putin went on to criticize once again Ukraine's overtures to join NATO. Is there hope to achieve a lasting peace, not just in eastern Ukraine, but between Ukraine and Russia? James Jatras is a former U.S. diplomat with knowledge of affairs during the Soviet era and the current deputy director of the American Institute in Ukraine. Thank you, Jim, for being with us. So what do you make of Poroshenko's comments that the Russian troops are leaving?
I think it indicates that Kiev is simply rearming and regrouping, getting ready to launch another offensive. Nobody could document that these troops had actually entered Ukraine. Nobody is documenting his claim now that they're leaving. I think it was very convenient for him to attribute the bad fortunes of Kiev's offensive as of the period before the ceasefire to a Russian invasion. And now that the Russians are supposedly gone, it would allow him to say, now we can resume the offensive. I think that's what it really points to.
Do you believe that Moscow actually sent troops to begin with?
I think there are Russian volunteers there. I think despite Moscow's denials, they've been supporting the insurgents in eastern Ukraine. Whether there was anything like a Russian invasion of regular forces, I very much doubt, and certainly no real proof has been shown. I think the bigger question is whether now this ceasefire can hold and whether anything can really be achieved at the negotiating table.
So speaking of the negotiating table, there's this fragile ceasefire in effect right now. All this maneuvering, Poroshenko says this, Putin says this, Russian troops are leaving. At the end of the day, is it going to strengthen the ceasefire or make it worse?
I think both sides have reasons to violate the ceasefire. As I say, I think Poroshenko has indicated he does intend to resume it. And frankly, politically, he can't do much else. You have radical groups that are essential to his support base, including some of these, let's be honest, neo-Nazis in the National Guard groups that will accuse him of being a traitor if he negotiates any kind of deal with the East. On the other hand, the insurgents felt that they were on a roll with their offensive. They were about to capture the city of Mariupol and feel they were caught up short. Poroshenko said he's going to offer them autonomy, which 4 or 5 months ago even would not have been acceptable to the eastern oblasts in Ukraine.
And is it okay now? Is that what?
Oh, no. He's not even offering federalization. And politically, he can't offer more than that because of the internal problems he has. On the other hand, the Lugansk and Donetsk republics say they will insist on independence.
So what is the end game here for Putin? How did we get in this situation and how do we get out?
I think the way we've gotten to the situation that we're still not out of yet, because Mr. Poroshenko will be addressing Congress next week.
You're critical of Poroshenko, with all due respect.
I am very critical of Poroshenko because,
what about
frankly,
Putin? I mean, do you think
I think the Russian policy here has been entirely reactive. They have reacted to circumstances in Ukraine, to what was the illegal and unconstitutional overthrow of a government in Kiev in February, and they've been making it up as they go along, as the Ukrainian state has progressively started to come apart. And as long as Poroshenko is listening to people in Washington, not so much in Europe, in Washington, to press forward with an offensive to try to crush the Easterners rather than negotiate with them, this is only going to keep getting worse.
Jim, do you believe Putin has made some mistake here as well, that perhaps both are to blame for this crisis?
I think the Russian side and the insurgent side have made mistakes. But as I say, I think they're being reactive. They're making this up as they go along. I don't think there's any big overarching plan coming from that side. They keep saying, why don't we go back to some kind of a balance in Ukraine between the east and west of the country, between European and Russian influence, rather than Washington's position, which is let's grab all the marbles and pull Ukraine into the Western camp, which is what is tearing the country apart.
So some might argue this whole crisis has really damaged relations between Russia and the West, and in fact they're at their lowest point since the Cold War. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, and we saw that the EU said they're going to impose new sanctions, but they're going to suspend them now to see how the ceasefire works out, and that's another reason for Poroshenko. He's actually incentivized to violate the ceasefire because it will result in more sanctions on Moscow. On the other hand, I think this time around, the Russians will probably respond with some very serious sanctions if the Europeans move forward with the ones that they've already announced on the oil industry.
James Jatras, as always, thank you so much, sir.